And I'm Cody.
We got a lot of news again. We had the culling Sao Paulo. We had Battle Harden in Sao Paulo as well. And we had Battle Harden in, how do you say that?
I'm going to mess that up too. It's probably Eindhoven, but I could be very wrong about that. In the Netherlands.
Yeah, so we had a Battle Harden there. We had the Skirmish Season 2, which we don't have a lot to say, but it's still something we can mention. And then we got a bunch of more spoilers. We got the podcast curse where we post something and immediately after all the other spoilers and stuff comes out.
I literally was posting links to it, to our podcast episode. And as I was posting these links, I get a notification of oh, there's something new in the spoiler channel as I'm posting a link to our podcast. Literally as well timed as it could be.
So, what did you do in Flesh and Blood?
Got me arrested drinking water.
Oh yeah.
Well, we both went to a case tournament this past weekend. One of the stores up here was hosting a tournament where the top 4 split a case. It was I think 2 boxes to the winner, 1 box to second place, and then it was 12. It was 14 and 8 packs. Whatever the distribution is for third and fourth. Some sort of.
I think it was packs. Third and fourth split a box.
Yeah, but I think it was more packs to third or something. Anyway, it was a case distributed amongst the top 4, and I believe there was 18 total people playing. And I personally brought Riptide, the stinky boy, and I lost with Riptide, the stinky boy. It turns out the meta there was very, very fatigue oriented and control oriented. There was a Teklovassin. There was a Reality Refractor Enigma, which, maybe not spoiler alert, that's the deck that ended up winning the event. And you were on Jarl, and I believe there was another Jarl or something, wasn't there? There's actually a breakdown in the Discord somewhere if I can find it. But I just remember looking around, and I'm just oh, I don't want to play against that deck and that deck and that deck and that deck. Where are all the Auroras? Where's all the aggro that I want to play against? And it was not seeing them. Even though there were there, I think there were 2 Auroras. But
there were 3 Auroras. I found it. There's only one Jarl, but there was a Victor. There, Florian. There's a big breakdown. There's so the only repeat heroes are Aurora with 3, and Maxx had 2.
Oh, right. Yeah, there were 2 Maxes.
Then there was a bunch of individuals like Ira, Jarl, KO, Verdant, Zen, Teklo, Enigma, Florian, Rhinar, Riptide, Slippy, Acilio, and Victor.
There was a lot of one-ups, yeah. Yeah, I just want to give Riptide one last send-off before I decide whether or not to bring him to PT London. And did not quite do well with him. I played against the Slippy round 1, and I won that matchup. I think that's pretty good for Riptide. And then I played against Ira round 2, and it was an aggro Ira that didn't really have much dagger recursion. So it didn't. I know there's some Ira lists that still run up sticks and whatnot, and they flick their Kodachis just to get that extra damage in. But this wasn't that list. It was just aggro Ira, and it was pretty good. I was impressed with the deck list. I went first, got to double load. And I did, I think it was a 25 damage turn on my following turn, and it still wasn't enough to beat the Ira. Even though I did a 24 damage turn or 25 damage turn or something like that, still wasn't enough. And then what did I play against? I played against a Verdance, and I beat that one, which was surprising because it did not feel like a good matchup at all. My opponent just wasn't able to decompose most of the time. They just didn't find the cards they needed to in the order they did. And then I played against you, and it was not a very close game. You went ahead and destroyed my. I think you did turn 0 Imposing Visage, put a counter on my New Horizon, and I think it was only a couple turns after that you destroyed it with. What's that card called again? The one you fuse?
Frozen to Death.
Frozen to Death. Yeah. So then I lost. I had a double arsenal at the time, and you did that, and I was like, yeah, this game's over. I can't come back from this. But yeah, how did your tournament go? Actually, I didn't get to see your final game.
Yeah, so I got 5th place,
dang.
just short of it.
Just
but
shy.
it was a super cool tournament. So round 1. Oh no! Why is my brain forgetting?
You weren't on stream
Because I
round
know
one, were you?
before. No, I didn't get on stream, unfortunately.
Oh,
I was
yeah,
at table 2, like 3 of
that's
my
right.
matches, so it was like 1 off from stream. But
Yeah, it was really quick. Just a quick thing for the viewers and listeners. That tournament actually was streamed by a local and another content creator who goes by Anarchy Please. You can find him on YouTube and everything, and that stream is actually up, so you can see. I looked at it today just a little bit, and there's a lot of games on there from that case tournament that you can go watch. It was really cool, so go check it out.
yeah, I would go check it, or like I recommend go check it out as well. Okay, I remember now, but I know that it threw me off because I played a game against the Acilio player before the tournament started, just to warm up, get ready. So I played the Acilio game, but again, we didn't quite finish. So then after that, we jumped into a KO. And I haven't played a KO before, so I was like a little worried on how that was going to go. But it ended up going, like, it sounds really bad, but I was at like 17 to their 39, and the one damage they took was from a beast within. But I got there in the end because it was like I was doing all the armor destruction stuff, and I did like frozen to death, and then he broke more armor to get me even further down. So after that point, I just had nonstop disruption, like ice card, CNC pummel. They just weren't able to come back, and I ended up taking that.
Nice.
Then the next round after KO, I played Zen, which my hands just kind of lined up. Like I just had the constant disruption. I played pretty aggressive into that match, and I was able to just take it down. There was those Zen, Reinhardt, Riptide, Slippy, Acilio, Victor.
You played against Teklo right, on stream?
I did, not on stream, but I did play Teklo Vossen. It was a really, really cool and fun game. We both got really low, and I ended up playing really aggressive, forcing him to block out. It was a really interesting match because he had the 9 overpower on me. Like, he was sitting on it in Arsenal for a few turns in a row, and he could have killed me, but I kept throwing like 8 to 9 power attacks, forcing him to block with his entire hand. So he couldn't throw it at me until I drew a pretty dud hand. So he ended up getting there in the end, but it was still a really fun and close match. There was Ira, and then I played you.
That's right, yeah. Round 4 was us, yep.
And turn 0, I had imposing into crumble into... I think I had some pretty... I can't remember the disruption turn 1, but then turn 2, I destroyed your hood, and you... Yeah. It was over from there.
It was not recoverable from that point.
And then there was round 5, the Ira. And this was my win it in to get into top 4. And unfortunately, I didn't get that get into that Ira or win that against Ira. But it was an interesting game. I got pretty beat up. I got karma for your match. It was an interesting Ira list though. Like I would take a turn off to try and disrupt, and there's like enough blues to get around a lot of the ice that I would throw. But at the same time, there's like disruption they throw back. It's just like nonstop. Like I throw disruption, increase their hand. Okay, it's just a Kodachi CNC. I leave them with a full hand, and they like, oh, dual threat, cut through. And like use the full hand no matter what. It was a really cool and interesting list.
Yeah, it reminds me of in the way of Hatchet Dory, where just every hand can convert for a lot of value, whether it's blocking or just playing out the hand, and it's just a lot of efficient damage. And the deck really impressed me. I wanted to like look into it a little bit more for Pro Tour London because it just felt like it was constantly like threatening mask of momentum really easily, throwing a lot of damage, a lot of efficient damage, and on hits. Like it was running like Bittering Thorns and obviously CNC, and he was even on double strike to like threaten mask even further. But then also there were dual threats in the deck, and those are just a 0 for 6 in that type of build of Ira. You just get to easily go Kodachi into an attack, into
Mhm.
Kodachi into an attack, and it's pretty brutal. It was
It
just
was
so much
really
nonstop
good.
damage that it felt undisruptible, even though it's probably not the case. And then I actually in my game I lost to his one of throw dagger in the deck. Literally, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to 1, but I'm gonna send this stuff back. I still have armor to block his Kodachis. I'm good. So I go to 1, I'm about to go to 1 from the attack, and he goes throw a dagger, and I'm like, yep, scoop.
It was very funny. I know that
Yeah,
like after the match, I ended up losing. He's like, "Did you see my one of throw dagger?" I'm like, "I
yeah,
did, I did."
yeah. It's
I
just
was
his
like,
one
I
of
saw it.
spicy.
I had to kind of play around that. I like Fruits of the Forest, but like I played the Fruits of the Forest when he wanted to throw dagger at me, which unfortunately for him would not have health for him.
Mm.
But it was a really good and fun match. But he got me pretty good.
Yeah, Ira's definitely one of those heroes that doesn't care as much about frostbites.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's just a constant barrage of damage. So yeah, but it was a fun tournament. I was glad I went. I always love going to like semi-competitive tournaments where it's not like anything big. It's like your PQs, your RTNs, and like this is
Mm.
in the same kind of boat where it's like it's there are tiers to the events, but I can't remember what the tiers are in Flesh and Blood. Of like there's armory level at the bottom, and then it's like this type of event, or no, it's like skirmishes, and then it's like this type
Skirmish
of
is the
event.
top of tier 1, I'm pretty
Or is
sure,
that what
and
it
then
is?
bottom of, I think I'm terrible. I'm pretty sure it's top of tier
Some,
1, and then RTN PQ is bottom of tier 2.
something like that,
I'm
yeah.
pretty sure
But anyway,
Battle
in that
Harden's
like middle
top.
range, I think it's a lot of fun because not only are they typically local, you get to play with locals that are obviously great people here, but I don't know, it's just like less of a weight on your shoulders. Like, oh, I have to do well, I want to do well and just
Mm.
succeed in this calling or pro tour or whatever. And it's more just like, oh, I'm here to play fun, to have fun and play a deck that I like to play. And if I do well, I do well. If not, then no worries. I just that's like that's where the fun of the game comes out for me personally.
Yeah. And it's fun to be able to sit down at like a semi-competitive tournament, but like with a bunch of people to be able to like play, like
Mm-hmm.
say some jokes, do all that fun stuff.
Yeah,
And like you
exactly.
said, not be like super serious. You're like, oh my goodness, like I traveled just to try and win at this. It's like
Yeah,
I drove
that too.
40 minutes for this, and like, oh no, I lost. I'll just drive home.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a big deal. It's like I came in here to have fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And then we also I went to one armory event this week, and I brought Dash.io this time off the Riptide. Decided to play Dash.io into the armory where I think about half of the room was the Jarl.
Yeah, yeah, it was crazy. It
Yeah.
was cool though. As a
It was fun.
Jarl enjoyer and one of the Jarls, it was cool. I enjoyed it. There's a
It
Jarl
was a lot of
here.
fun for you. I think you also turn 0 crumbled me, or crumbled or no imposing
No,
visage
I
into.
did.
You did it
Yeah,
into but this time you chose
Channel Lake
Channel
Frigid.
Frigid, which was interesting, because it wasn't the worst for me because I like to do a lot of setup anyway, and I thought that like was it the first game or second game? Did we play second game? No, we didn't. We only played one game, right?
Mm.
Yeah, only one game. But there was a really interesting spot where I ended up like kind of attacking you a little bit to try to like find an item and like play out a Teklo Pounder, but I could have actually double Teklo Powdered you on a turn, which was really hilarious. That was the correct line, just a double Teklo Pounder pass. It was a very interesting game where I did a lot of blocking. I literally would just like block your attack and just like play an item or play a Teklo Pounder or something, and then you would be like, oh, hammer for 4. And so I was doing a lot of setup and didn't end up getting there. I got fatigued, but I think I could have had I made that double Teklo Pounder play instead of the play that I made.
Yeah, you would have had a lot more room on your attacks and you could have gotten a lot further. But it was like really funny because you threw an attack with me and I blocked with like a defense reaction or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you pass turn after playing like one of your Teklo Pounders instead of playing both Teklo Pounders using some action point shenanigans, whatever. But you like did that and you passed with 3 cards still in my hand, and I'm like looking at Sink Below, Shelter from the Storm, and Unmovable, Unforgivable, like Unforgiving, Unforgiving. And I blocked with the defense. My hand was all defense reaction.
Yeah,
So I like look at it, look down at the field. I'm like, pass with
yeah.
3 cards in hand, 1 card in Arsenal. It was
so
really funny because I was just like, this is like just feels wrong. Like IP3. I'm like, this is 100% correct, but
Yeah, it feels a bit rough. Yeah, there was also one turn where I had my hand was Spark of Genius and 3 red attacks, and you go Ice Quake, Spinal Crush, and it was like, oh my god, if it wasn't both Ice Quake and Spinal Crush, I would be happy just to like block with 3 cards and play something. I also had I think it was like Techlo Core or Boom Grenade on the top of the deck at the time too.
oh yeah.
But like I couldn't both like the best thing I could have done was like only block 6 or something and then like do the items, both the items, but it just like just wasn't really working out no matter what. And yeah, there's your deck is built in a way that like really makes my deck cry. Spinal for 10 with an on hit, even without the crush effect, is brutal.
It's very good.
Yeah,
it's my spicy tech is the blue Ice Quake. It is my favorite tech in that list.
Yeah, was working out pretty well for you there.
Worked out well for me during the case tournament too. Like it's like one of my favorite cards in the list that I haven't seen in any other Jarl list.
Right. Yeah, it's weird because it's just a 1 power and 1 frostbite on hit is enough to be really impactful to some decks. But yeah, do you have anything else for your Weekend Flesh and Blood?
No, I just went to the same armory as you. We played Jarlmir. I think I played. Yeah, I played the Acilio turn 1. Like the big note of the Acilio game was he went off on a huge combo turn, and I held a Blizzard in hand, and I Blizzard his last attack just to give him a frostbite. Like he had a billion action. I was like a couple extra action points, but like I Blizzard his last attack just to give him a frostbite, and it prevented 12 arcane damage.
Yeah, that's
a 1 card block, like 12.
1 card insane. 12, the dream.
Like, I'm like, this isn't gonna like it was crazy. I'm like, the go again doesn't matter, but give you a frostbite? And he's like, yeah, Arsenal pass. And then next turn he plays it from Arsenal. I'm like, it was a spell. Oh man.
Yep.
It's crazy.
That's crazy.
And then there was the Jarlmir, which like I could talk about for ages, but it was fun back and forth. But I was able to like plan off of like I didn't see any of my Oakenolds until like 4 hands before my pitch stack.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm about to hit pitch stack soon, and I haven't seen a single Oakenold. So I was able, like, I was kind of able to play around it, but it was like,
that reminds me.
And then
didn't you do like a disrespectful double fuse against me? It was so funny. You went like Oakenold, and you showed me 2 of the defense reacts or whatever.
No, it was
what card is it
I'm
again?
like Oakenold, and I'm like, I'm gonna Earth Fuse with Crumble to Eternity, and I'm like, and I'll Ice Fuse with the other Crumble to Eternity in hand, like those crumbles.
Yeah, it was like, okay, I see you.
But yeah, it was funny.
But yeah, so that was our Weekend Flesh and Blood. There was a huge tournament this past weekend in Sao Paulo, like you said earlier. There was a calling and a battle hardened. And the calling was won by I'm gonna mess up this name, Carlos Eduardo Amaral da Silva on Aurora. So Aurora won a calling this past weekend. You might say it's not surprising, but I do think that the meta there was much more aggressive than I expected. There was actually, I don't have it on me. Do you know Do you happen to have the meta breakdown on you?
Oh, I do. Here's the I don't have the meta, but I have the top 8.
I have it here, right? Yes. Okay, here I have it. So there were 44 Auroras, 24 Zen. So 20 that difference there is pretty significant, right? 44 Aurora, and then the second most brought deck was Zen at 24. So almost doubling the second most brought deck. And then 22 Syndra, 19 new, 18 Dash IO, and then there's like a handful of others in the 10s and whatnot. But pretty aggressive meta there, and that's apparently pretty common for South America. I've heard that South America has a uh, they like aggressive decks, the aggro decks, and so in a meta like that, with Aurora being just the best aggro deck, it makes sense that she did well. I was surprised to see that there was 18 Dash IO. Apparently, Dash IO has a pretty good Aurora matchup, so I guess that makes sense as well. But yeah, so Aurora ends up showing that she is the dominant deck at Sao Paulo, beating an Enigma in the finals. And then who won the Battle Hardened?
I don't know how to pronounce the name, and I feel
It's
so
fine.
bad.
It's fine.
I don't. I'm already terrible at English, and I don't know what that A. So it's Joel.
Yeah, I don't know because there's like a tilde over the A.
Yeah.
It's JOAO Voltron, FOLTRAN. But what I was trying to get at is who were they playing?
They were on Jarl.
Yeah.
Jarl won the Battle Hardened, which is sick.
Yeah.
I've looked over, and there's a lot of like different Jarl lists that like succeeded over the weekend, and it was cool because at the Armory, like talking to all the other Jarl players, were like talking about like, oh, like you could play this type of Jarl. This Jarl went well. Like the one that won the Battle Hardened was a Count Your Blessings Earth Jarl. So they're like playing to Decompose, playing Count Your Blessings, and they've like that's like the list that's had the most success over the weekend. But there was an event. I can't remember exactly, but it was either at one of the Battle Hardens or the Calling. There was a more like an Earth-oriented Jarl that wasn't on Decompose. I don't think it was full Earth, but it was or not Decompose. Non-CYB. It still had Decompose in it, but it was a non-CYB list that did really well and got 10th place in one of these events. And that list has been like circulating around our Discord too.
Oh yeah. Yes, but this one was, you said this one was an Earth CYB list?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yeah,
I'm trying to like see if there's any like notable standouts from like a normal Jarl list. Like I didn't see any with the CYB list. Mm-hmm. I know the other Jarl was running Mulch, which was like super interesting to see. Yeah, this one seems pretty stock standard, but it like makes sense because Jarl is good into a lot of the aggressive decks in the meta. It is like in a way playing Gem Lotto when you're playing Jarl. You just don't want to hit like you can still play against new. It's just not good, but you don't want to hit Enigma. Like you sit down, you hit Enigma, it's pretty much game over. So like going in and sitting down, like you have a pretty okay matchup, if not good matchup into a like Aurora. You're sitting down, you have a pretty good like any other aggressive deck like Dash IO. You have a good matchup into. So it's something like you're sitting down, like trying to play into these good aggressive matchups, which like when you do and you have like the like skill, you can go far with them.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, that was cool to see. Saw Jarl win a Battle Hardened. And then there was another Battle Hardened in, I'm gonna pronounce it wrong probably, Eindhoven in the Netherlands. Christian Weebling on Fang took that down. So Fang takes down a Battle Hardened this weekend, this past weekend. And it's an interesting list. It is on 8 blues and 6 yellows. So effectively 14 resource cards and a ton of D reacts. There's 3 Sink Blows, 3 Shelters, 3 of that Loyalty Beyond the Grave, the one that draws a card if there's 2 in your banish
Mhm.
or in your grave at the start of the turn. Your 3 of the yellows are that all you got. So you just have a ton of defensive capability. And I've actually played against this list on Talishar since this tournament happened and the list got released. And it's looked pretty strong. They seem to consistently get their fealty engine online so that the resource cards can either just block or sometimes they play out like the yellow scar tissue, for example. They can still just play that out if they want to. Their saver bloodshed turns are just really strong. It's just a 0 for potentially 8. With the way that the deck works and gives you a lot of 4 value cards in the deck.
Mhm.
It seemed very strong. I've actually been pretty impressed when I've run into it. I'm still surprised that it is consistent enough to win a battle hardened like this. It feels like you'll draw like not all red hands before you're online, just kind of like kind of lose the game because of it. But I don't know. I'm not a Fang expert, so it's possible that it gets through that anyway. I did play against the Fang as Enigma, and I forgot that Kabuto affects your auras since
Oh
your
yeah.
auras are weapons. And just pro tip: don't do a levels of enlightenment into a mirror guy play because they just block with helmet. Now your mirror guy just sits there, looks pretty.
They like jagged edge and destroy your mirror guy, 0 value mirror guy.
Yeah, this list actually is on Jagged Edge. I didn't notice that at first, but yeah, they have
This
that
is
as well.
like a wild battle hardened. Like the top 8 is Fang, Florian, which is like average now, Enigma, Victor, Enigma, Dash, IE,
Wow, Dash
Inventor
IE.
Extraordinaire, Zen, Levia. Like, what is this top 8? This is crazy.
See,
And
there
this
were.
had 160 people in it for a battle hardened. So
I was
it
just
was
about
a
to say,
lot of people.
yeah, it wasn't like a small battle hardened by any means.
Mm-mm.
160 people, and Fang took it down. Really impressive.
I haven't seen like a Dash IE make top 8 in like
That too,
and
yeah.
like a big event in forever. And Levia too. Like what a crazy battle hard. And you had Victor, which like I think Victor's like a sneaky, like good hero. I
Right.
personally think he's better than Jarl right now. Like I just don't have as much fun playing him.
Yeah.
But beyond that point, it is like a really cool battle hard to see the top 8.
Mhm.
Speaking of which, back to like just a little break back to Sub Hollow. The games. Did you watch any of the games over the weekend?
I watched a couple. I heard that the Acilio game was really, really cool to watch, but I haven't gotten around to actually watching it yet. But I did
There was
watch.
some.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say there's some amazing
Yeah,
games over the weekend.
yeah. I watched a good handful of them though. I definitely watched the finals, the Aurora versus Enigma, and I know I watched a couple before that too. Some Florian games on stream. I saw Michael Hamilton beat a Florian on new. Did like a really sick comeback. I don't know if you watched that game, but it was like I think Michael was at like 8 to Florian's like 20 or something like that, 25, and won that game. Took it down in the end. And you can see, I think it was on the very first turn or the second turn. You can see he gets attacked, and he pitches uh 2 Justinix and a Bonds of Agony all together to the bottom of the deck
Mm-hmm.
early in the game. And you're like, okay, that's going to come back later and just to take down this Florian. And sure enough, it did. So it was really cool to watch that game. But were there any highlights of the stream that you saw?
That well, like I saw that pitch stack play on turn 2, and that was crazy. That was cool. But then it's like I loved watching the Dory games. It was really unfortunate because in like the finals, Dory played in Aurora, and like they were this close. They had like 3 opportunities to win, and unfortunately, like the stress of the finals, like got on the Dory player, and so they made a couple mistakes. And it was like So close. It was so cool to see a Dory, a Dawnblade Dory, get so far.
Yeah, and I believe we saw them defeat an Enigma earlier in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember correctly, it might have been the same Dory player. So that was cool to see too. Finally the Jagged Edge tech coming in and actually making an impact in that matchup.
I didn't expect Jagged Edge to be like this good, but like over the weekend with Fang and Dory, it seemed to be like really relevant.
Yeah. I mean, Enigma is one of the most brought decks. What was it at again for Sao Paulo? It was actually it wasn't that big at Sao Paulo. There were only 11, but it's still one of the more popular decks, I think, in the meta overall. And so having Jagged Edge as a way to push through damage when the Enigma thinks that they're going to actually block something and they don't, losing value on their stuff, it's a pretty big deal.
Did you see that this Dory list is a sideboard count your blessing list too?
I thought I saw that. I could have swore I saw Count Your Blessings in that Dory deck, and then I couldn't find it later. So that I feel vindicated. I was like, I could have swore they were on Count Your Blessings too. It is interesting, right? Because you get to swing, pitch a blue, swing your Dawn Blade, and your opponent might overblock it for 6, and then you just end up playing CYB anyway, which is a really cool way to get value out of your hand, regardless of whether or not they're blocking, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense to have CYB in Dory and Dawnblade Dory for that reason.
Yeah, and I think it's for like the defensive matchup because they didn't bring it into the like aggressive matchups or like the Auroras. And I don't think they brought it into Enigma either. But when you sit down I missed like a couple games on day one, and there was one matchup where they did bring CYB in. And I haven't seen that full game yet, but it's super interesting because on the defensive matchups, like you're saying, like you can just kind of like gain life instead of going for the attack react over because it's not like you're gaining counters in the defensive matchup anyways. So it gives you a little more playroom to like turn around and be more aggressive late game.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good fatigue math deck, right? I remember Easton Douglas, before CYB was even out, was playing a version of Fatigue Dory where it just ran a lot of yellows and blues. It ran a lot of poppers because Dromai was still a deck at the time, and it was just doing a lot of efficient plays and a lot of making your opponent block your weapon when you're pitching a card and they're blocking with 1 or 2 cards, right? So you just have that fatigue math built in to the deck, and then you get to take advantage of their overblocking. So it makes a lot of sense. I've seen it. I've seen the concept proven before, and so CYB just takes it an extra step further.
Yeah, it is cool though to see all these events, and like these top 8s are all wild across the board. You have so many super cool and interesting like games and heroes all mixing into the top 8. It's not just Aurora on the top, although I think everyone can agree that she's still best deck.
Yeah, she's definitely the best deck, and that's something I do want to talk about if we have time at the end of this episode is a little bit about the meta and where like what I'm considering for PT London and stuff and why. But I think that could be a fun thing if we have time.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, so with that being said, we didn't actually cover the skirmish season last week. We kind of skipped over it. So this week we're gonna talk about it a little bit. In Blitz, Aurora was the clear winner with 33 wins in Blitz skirmishes for week 2, followed by Verdance with 21 wins, and then Blaze with 10, KO with 9. I think this is the one-arm KO, not the original KO. Dromai with 9, Levi with 8, and then it just keeps going on. There's actually a very, very wide skirmish meta here. I don't think I can show it on here easily, but the pie chart is just so full of heroes for skirmish blitz season, and it's really cool to see. Aurora definitely taking the lead, but then after that, it's pretty wide open. We do see one Earth hero up here. Actually, we see Terra's also. Terra got 5 wins.
You have 3 Earth heroes.
Yeah, we do see all 3.
Florian and Terra.
Yeah, they're all here, but Verdance is the only one that like really showed up due to the Crown of
Yeah.
Seas ban. The others are performing along with the other heroes. They're not overperforming in any way due to Crown of Seeds being unbanned. So that was cool to see. And then Zen still had some wins. 5 wins despite the traverse ban. So probably relying on actually, is Lynx allowed in skirmish or is that banned? I want to say it's banned.
I'm pretty sure it's allowed.
I think it's banned. But anyway, he found another helmet to replace traverse and is still seems to be doing fine despite that. And then for Living Legend, Chain was the clear winner with 22 wins, followed by Bravo at 7 wins, and then Dromai at 6, Dash.io at 6, and then a good handful behind. But that's a really crazy disparity. Chain with 22 wins in Living Legend skirmishes. Almost, actually, it looks like it is a quarter of
Lynx
wins.
is banned.
Lynx is banned. Okay, I thought so. I thought so. Yeah, Chain really showing up for Living Legends. Did you didn't plan any skirmishes, right?
No, I wish I could have, and I really wanted to. I think we went over a tiny bit about like how I couldn't last week, and there are no more skirmishes in Colorado. Like it was only 1 week of skirmishes, which is like, or I wouldn't say Colorado, at least in the Denver area. It's unfortunate. I actually was really excited to go.
Yeah, because you wanted to bring Bravo, right?
Bro, like I wanted to go to 2 and bring Bravo and Terra just to kind of like feel them both out, but
yeah,
unfortunately neither ended up working out.
Yeah, I wish. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it is interesting to see like this like pie chart, and I know I was watching the dev talk that came out yesterday, and they were talking about how like how successful the intro like products are, bringing like people into like into the game with Aurora is, and they were saying that there is a disproportionate amount of like Auroras playing at these events, and even then only like 15% of the events are won by Aurora.
That is true. They have all that data because of how they have everybody enter their hero in for every event. So that's interesting. I didn't get to catch the dev talk before this podcast, but they must have all that data of, okay, we released an Aurora Armory deck and now the number of Auroras have doubled at these events. So it'd be cool to, I wonder if they would ever consider sharing some of that data. But we'll see if that happens. Right. I do wish there. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I do wish there were more skirmishes around, because I've been trying to I've been picking up pieces to rebuild Dromai. Not only because I got rid of my tomes when she LL'd, but she also runs Oath of Loyalties and the new boots, and so I've been slowly picking up stuff for LL Dromai. I just didn't have an opportunity to. There hasn't an opportunity to play it. Hasn't come up yet.
Right.
We just don't have them.
And then one thing I wanted to, oh no, my point. I lost it.
No. I forgot what we were talking about too.
Yeah, I had a different point on Living Legend. It's cool to see, like, it's cool and interesting to see like Chain dominate Living Legend with like Starvo going, and I wouldn't say like dominate, but he won like a quarter of the events. But it's like I don't think I've ever seen Living Legend like have such a split on the pie chart too, because you look at this chart and there's Chain, Starvo, Dromai, Dash.io, Briar, Zen, Aurora, Prism, Lexi, Viscerai, Prism again, and then even then it breaks down to 9 other heroes that won an event. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean it does look.
Dory won an LL event. What?
Well, who won?
Dory. And Leviat. Whoa, I didn't look deep in this list.
I mean, yeah, it is interesting. What, like, if you remove Chain from this pie chart, it is a very healthy meta, right? Like there are a lot of heroes in the roughly like 4 to 7 range, right? A lot of good options there. But yeah, I wonder if what were the changes they made to LL recently? It was the electromagnetic restriction, right? Was there anything else
Yeah,
they did, or was it
I
just
think that's
that?
it. Electromagnetic somersault. I know that Cole came into the game, got the new set, and that's like the biggest thing that came. Well, that and the Drum My Boot
What came into the game?
came in.
Oh,
Hunted the last
Cole.
set, and
Right.
Cole came in,
No, Cole is
which
very good for chain. Yeah, yeah.
mhm.
I forgot. I didn't think about that one. Yeah. So I wonder if they're gonna be touching. They'll probably touch chain in the next BNR if I were to guess. Unless this is an outlier week for some reason, but I kind of doubt it is. Um, and then it's possible that they end up touching Aurora for Blitz because she's been up. She's definitely at the top. And then when it comes to CC, she might get touched there as well. She's. It feels like she's not only. I don't know. She's definitely put up results, but she's also, as you mentioned from the dev talk, she is overrepresented, right? And we see that with Sao Paulo, with her being the number one most brought deck, but yet still only having 3 Auroras in the top 8. So her conversion rate is obviously still good, but it's not as high as you would think it is considering the play rate. And
I remember my
powerful.
point.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it was another interesting point in the dev talk to like distract from all the conversations that we've had. Is with Aurora being so dominant, like they did like a little like in like house study like in like I forget how they said it, but they had like a questionnaire that they had all the developers take, and they asked like who is like the most fun deck to play and who was the least fun to play against. And they found that most of the time, heroes that were very fun to play were also very unfun to play against. Because it's usually stuff like Chain, who's super dominant but super hard to play against, or Starvo, who like people love playing Starvo. People hate playing against Starvo. So like stuff like that, where it's like a lot of decks that have been super dominant in the past, like Lexi, who's dominant that people didn't like play. A lot of decks have been in a situation where like people love playing those decks, but don't like playing against those decks. But they found that in house, like people love playing Aurora, but also love playing into Aurora, which is like kind of against the curve. And it's something that I actually like when they said it, it's something I've thought about, but not like really put into words. But it's like I actually like playing into Aurora. It's a lot of fun. Like there's a lot of like avenues to play it and take it on. And I guess like I am playing Jarl, but
Yeah.
to that point, like there's still like things where it doesn't feel like the Aurora is ever out of the game, even if I'm presenting all this disruption. And then like sometimes like I've told you before, like there's been games I'm down like 23 life points against an Aurora. I'm like, I'm in this. I'm gonna win this game. Like,
Yeah.
it is for like the best deck. It has like been the most fun for like me as well personally to play against this like Aurora compared to like all these other top decks we've ever had.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that because I mean, reflecting on it, I guess that I would have to agree that she's probably one of the. I don't know if I'd say it's fun to play against her, but I would definitely say that it's not miserable to play against her,
Yeah.
considering her position as the top deck and the strongest deck in the format. Um, Definitely not like playing against an illusionist when they're the top in the format, or Starvo, or the Rune Blades when they're busted. It's not like that at all. It's like there's actually a game there. There's actually some counterplay that you get to do. Um, it doesn't feel like you're just getting steamrolled, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I guess like to say it's like super fun is like a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's not like it's a crazy like okay this isn't fun to play against. I think
Right.
they said choose average of the pack to play against. Like oh this is okay to play against.
Right, exactly.
Like still fun and still has a lot of interaction, but it was just like it's like she's an outlier hero compared to a lot of other heroes that have been in the game, which is super cool and interesting.
Mm-hmm. I will say to your point about um, a lot of players having fun playing the decks that are really strong and really doing a lot of things. That's why Living Legend, I think, is doing so well in terms of people actually engaging with the format, right? Because
Mhm.
everyone gets to do the thing, right? Everyone gets to do their big combo and their large turns and all that kind of stuff, right? And so even if you're playing against a busted deck, you are also playing a busted deck, and you still get to have fun with it, right? And that's what I'm looking forward to. That's why it's interesting to me. Is it's like I get to play a deck that I used to play and really enjoy back in the day, and I get to upgrade it. I get to make it even better. All right, like I get to play Dromai with these new Draconic cards that make her insanely good. Except she's not insanely good in the format. She's just good. So she's not like busted. She's just actually she's a good deck, and that's about it. You know. So it's really cool how that format has been progressing over time. How much
Mhm.
they've been keeping an eye on it and keeping and making tweaks and really putting attention to the format to make it a very viable and fun uh, version of the game to play. I've been really looking. I've been looking into that, and I've been keeping an eye on it. It's been really cool to watch the progression.
Yeah, and it's cool. It feels like every format is slowly evolving into its own format where it's like
Mm-hmm.
you had like CC Light, and like CC Expanded.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of that in each format, but it definitely feels like you have like CC, which is the more main format. But you have Living Legend, where you get to play like all these crazy strategies that like are not like normal within Flesh and Blood anymore, like Scalata, or you get to play Chain, Starvo, Dromai. You get to play Dash IO with all the broken, or just high octane, and then you get to play like Briar, Zen with all of the, not all, but like Zen with a lot of the old tech when he'd be super exposed. It's like you get to do stuff that is like not legal in what is like considered regular classic constructed, and like just power levels leagues above, which is like super cool in its own right. And then you have like Blitz now, where like with Crown of Seeds and a lot of these young heroes being like different than any of the adult heroes now. Like you have Blaze, you have Solitary Confinement, which is kind of like Skippy, but a little different. You have
Yeah.
the different Dory, you have Terra, you have Data Doll, you have a lot of like different heroes. Prism's still in that format. Felt like it's also a lower power level. It's starting to feel like its own format in a way. I still think it could use a little tweaking to be like a little less than CC Light, but like it does feel like this game is starting to branch into a different.
Yeah. No, they feel like separate formats. I agree, and that's what's cool about it too, is that you get to not just like it's both a good and bad thing. You don't just take your deck and just take out 20 cards and now it's a blitz deck, right? It's actually a different
Mhm.
format with the different rules and different it's a whole different experience, right? Um, but yeah, definitely looking forward to potentially playing Living Legend in the future. Uh, yeah, it's just sad that we didn't get didn't get more skirmishes here.
Right.
Do you have anything else to say about that before moving on to spoilers?
We can move on to spoilers. So I
I was
just
gonna
pulled up
say
the spoiler
I
list.
did.
It looks
Oh,
like during our little podcast,
yes,
the Maxx spoiler, like
it sure
40
did.
minutes ago, a Maxx spoilers all came out. That's
Perfect
crazy.
timing this time. We just missed it last week, but this week we're right on time. It literally came out
Oh,
while we're recording this podcast. Um, so do you want to go over these, or you want me to read these out?
yeah, go ahead and read them. You're gonna
All
probably
right.
be better at it.
So it looks like we have 6 new cards spoiled for Max so far. There's probably more, but this is like the automated post for Max spoilers. The first one is Construct Bank Breaker. It's a yellow 0 cost mechanologist action that blocks 3, and it has a keyword construct. Which have we seen that before? It doesn't sound familiar to me.
I think
Is it?
it's the
Oh, the
mechanoid is a
mechanoid.
construct.
That's right. Mechanoid is a construct. Okay. And it says if you have a wrench weapon equipped, transform it and 3 hyperdrivers you control into Bank Breaker, then equip Bank Breaker. Hold on. And let's go again.
Wait,
Hold on. What is Bank
so you have to
Breaker?
play Banksy? Is Because isn't Bank Breaker the new weapon? Yeah, Bank Breaker is the new weapon.
Oh, so that's how you get hyperdrivers underneath it.
So are you not allowed to play the? Do you have to play Banksy first?
Let me
You have
look.
a
Let me
wonderful
look at
equip
the original.
transform and 3 hyperdrivers you control into
Oh,
Bank Breaker, then equip Bank Breaker.
I guess that's interesting. I guess you can that, or maybe
Maybe you can, but you can also transform your weapon.
yeah. Weird. Is it
Oh,
is
like you could start with it, but it doesn't have any benefit. It's just like a 1 for 3.
I guess so. So that's interesting. So that
But
answers the question of how do you get hyperdrivers underneath Bank Breaker, and it's you play construct Bank Breaker in order to do that.
like you start with Banksy and then you construct Bank Breaker and turn
Yeah.
Banksy into
Or
Bank Breaker.
maybe you can start with Bank Breaker and then you can transform your Bank Breaker and just into a better Bank Breaker. Maybe that's like the
Yeah.
idea behind it too. Weird.
Oh, how weird.
Wait, so this is interesting. So the way that's worded is odd. So it says if you have a wrench weapon equipped, transform it and 3 hyperdrivers into Bank Breaker. Oh, then equip it. I see. So you basically you make it into an arena stone and then you equip it into your weapon slot. I see now. I thought it was like you're gonna make your Bank Breaker and then make a Bank Breaker. I was a little bit confused there. Yeah, it says flip this and put the transformed cards underneath it. So the back side of this card is Bank Breaker. That's really interesting. I wonder how the ruling works if you can start with it or not. Super interesting. We now know how you get hyperdrivers underneath the weapon that we got spoiled earlier. Well, I'm gonna read out the other cards before we do some more like theorizing on the strength of the cards.
Oh yeah, totally.
So the next card is Twin Tech Charging Station. It is a red 0 cost 2 block action. The next attack you boost this turn gets +3. You may shuffle a hyperdriver from your graveyard into your deck. If you do, gain 1 resource. Interesting. So it's really wanting to have more hyperdrivers, I guess, main decked, that you eventually you utilize them, so they go to your graveyard, and then this one allows you to shuffle it back into your deck and gain a resource. This is effectively a 0 cost +3 gain a resource card, which is very strong if you get that effect.
It's kind of interesting because it forces you to run the hyperdriver in your deck, which I don't.
Well, maybe
I don't know
we'll
if that's
see.
going to be used.
Let's see. There's 4 equipment that are spoiled. Potentially, there's a reason to run hyperdrivers in your deck with one of these.
Fair enough.
So we have the helmet, Breaker Helm Protos. When this defends, you may discard a hyperdriver. If you do, draw a card, and this gets +1 until the turn. Okay, there we go. So this is actually exactly what we were looking for, right? Because the biggest problem with Maxx is when you draw them, you don't want them. This lets you cycle it out, so that's pretty good. Drive Break, they're legs that are Battle Worn 1. Oh, and the helmet is Temper 2, by the way. The legs are Battle Worn 1. Whenever you banish a hyperdriver from boosting, remove a -1 counter from this.
Oh, that's sick. That's so cool.
That is really sick. That's really, really good. Then we have the chest, Puffer Jacket. It is a 2-block temper that says non-token hyperdrivers you control enter the arena with an additional steam counter. Okay. So when you play them out,
Temper 2. Oh
it
my
is
goodness.
Temper 2. Yeah, the helmet's also Temper 2. Or no, sorry, the helmet's Temper 1, but it's effectively Temper 2 because of the effect.
Yeah.
And then the arms, Fist Pump, 1 block Battle Worn. Whenever you banish a hyperdriver from boosting, target wrench you control gets +1 this turn. Okay. So this is it feels
That's
like this deck.
Passive effect.
What was that?
I said that's just kind of that's just a passive effect. You don't have to activate it or destroy the arms. It's just whenever you banish the hyperdriver from boosting,
You're
target
right.
wrench you control gets +1 this turn.
That's interesting because specifically with Bank Breaker, you can attack with it multiple times in a turn by banishing a hyperdrive underneath it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as a reminder for Bank Breaker, it's a 3 power, twice per turn action attack. Activate only if you crank this turn. When this attacks, you may banish a card from underneath it. If you do, it gets overpower and go again. And then we also have the item that gives it +2.
And then, but if you have the arms and you're attacking with Bank Breaker,
right,
it turns into a 1-for-4 with go again by banishing off the
right, exactly.
Hyperdriver.
Oh
whoa, that's so cool.
This is interesting. I don't know.
Oh,
how
from
strong...
boosting. Never mind.
Yeah, it's
Ignore
from boosting. Yeah. That's why it's like you almost have. It almost is like you want to run 9 hyperdrivers in your deck, but you definitely don't want to run 9 hyperdrivers in your deck. Like maybe there's a world where you do. Maybe you can just like play out hyperdrivers and crank them. But wait, hyperdriver doesn't have go again, does it?
Oh, it's been a minute.
It does not. Wait, no, hold on. That was a different one. Where's the actual playable hyperdriver? Oh, I have to change the color here.
But it doesn't. But Maxx gives hyperdrivers crank, so you can.
But I was wondering if it would get an extra action point by playing it out, and it does not. So that's interesting. Yeah, it feels like Construct Bankbreaker is not necessarily a separate game plan from the Mechanoid, but potentially another side plan to the Mechanoid, where you can. No, that never works, right? I guess you can never do both. I do think the helmet is very strong, though. I think the helmet for Maxx was never particularly useful, right? They used to run Hyper X3 before, which they just ran as a Battle Worn 1. And then they've been lately running the new helmet from the Dash IO Armory deck. Because it would block 2 and also boost a card, which I guess it was just a block 2 Mechanologist helmet.
I was gonna say, I think it's just because it blocks 2.
Yeah, I think that's the only reason. But now this other helmet, it allows you to run. I know some Maxx decks were already running red hyperdrivers in the deck just to help get out their combo a little easier. And this effectively plays into that by letting you run maybe just the red hyperdrivers, and then if you draw and you really don't want to play it out, you get to block with a helmet, discard it, and then that synergizes with the Twin Tech charging station, which lets you shuffle it back into your deck and gain a resource. Or I think there's some other ways that you can utilize hyperdrivers in your graveyard. But it also allows you to run like some of these other equipment, like the Drive Break. It's a repeatable 1 block. And when you boost away the hyperdrivers, you're happy. In fact, that's actually one of the biggest reasons the deck ran hyperdrivers, is because they would play, I believe it's called Gas Up. Yes, it's called Gas Up, which says you may put a hyperdriver from your banished zone into the arena. And it has go again. So this would give you an action point if you do this. If you boost a hyperdriver, and then you play Gas Up, you can get an action point off of it, which is really useful when you have the Mechanoid out, because then you get to swing with it a second time. So I have a feeling that this wrench game plan is just not going to exist, but Maxx's are now going to run these boots and the helmet and 3 red hyperdrivers, or maybe blue hyperdrivers, or maybe yellow hyperdrivers. But regardless, I think they're going to run 3 hyperdrivers and the helmet and the boots. That's my prediction.
It's not sick. I don't know. I think it's super cool because it like turns all these hyperdrivers into like alternate resources, which is like what I think is so cool. Where you have a bunch of stuff that's like, oh, if you banish it, you can block again, which is like you gain 1 life, which is a resource in its own right in this game. You have the helmet, which like lets you, like, if you have a hyperdriver in hand, lets you pretty much block with it and draw a card. So it lets you cycle it out, which is like really cool. And then you have the fist pump, which lets you go and throw your weapon for +1, even if it's just Banksy or like regular Banksy coming in for the, I can't remember if it's.
It comes in for 3, but yeah, if you basically what this is saying is if you boost
Coming
him,
for 4 makes it a
it'll come in
break
for
point.
4, which is a break point, and it puts a counter back on a hyperdriver that you control. So
And then
that's pretty cool.
you have like Puffer Jacket, which is like a cool alternative to the uh
The Foundry Heart?
Techlo Foundry Heart. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it makes hyperdrivers all of these like it makes hyperdrivers a lot more useful. Instead of like I draw it, I have to play it. Oh, I boost it away. There's no real benefit except if I have gas up. It's like all of a sudden, like you're like, I want to boost my hyperdrivers and put them in my deck. I want to like, and if I draw a hyperdriver, well, I'll just block with it using my helmet, and it gives you a couple turns where you can like block and do that in a like necessary situation. You also have the Twink Tech chart. Sorry, Twin Tech, not Twink. Sorry, Twin Tech charging station, where it allows you to shuffle one from your graveyard in your deck and gain you a resource. Like you could play this into gas up. So you play this, gaining a resource, play gas up, playing one from your banished zone that you banished earlier in the turn, boost something, and so you're getting +6 on your next boosted attack. So then you boost something. If you have another like hyperdriver out, you can then throw. You have to crank, but like there's so many like cool and different things you can do with this deck, and it like allows to like the most awkward part about hyperdriver being that hyperdriver you have to draw it and play it. It like allows like it to be or like it doesn't do anything. It just gives you resources all over the point for having hyperdrivers.
Yeah. So I think from my understanding, at least for Maxx, a lot of decks weren't running hyperdriver because you wanted to boost it, but you didn't want to draw it. Because if you drew it, it was a red dead card in your hand. Like you could play it, but you typically just want to block out until you find your mechanoid and get set up for it, right? And you want to boost it so that you can gas up to get it out of the banish zone and cheat out that free hyperdriver that way. The helmet just totally fixes that problem, right? Because now you get to get out of jail free on your first hyperdriver that you draw. And so that's a very big. I think the helmet is the biggest deal out of these spoilers. The rest of them I think are very playable, but I think the helmet is the key card here. Just for the game plan that Maxx was already doing in the first place, or at least wanted to do in the first place.
Right.
I do want to point out something that's interesting here. I think there is some play for the wrench with like an anti-fatigue game plan, right? Where effectively you could be just boost Maxx and you don't run that. Maybe you have the Nitro Mechanoids for different matchups, and you get to run the Construct Bankbreaker into fatigue matchups. Well, Mechanoid is good into fatigue matchups. What am I saying? But regardless, you could have this like anti-fatigue package in there, maybe for aggro, where you're just boosting your deck away, and at some point you get to the point where you don't have very many cards left in your deck, but you have hyperdrivers out, and you have hyperdrivers in the graveyard, and you get to play something like Twin Tech to shuffle it back in, and then you boost it away, giving you +1 on your wrench with Fist Pump, and then you swing your weapon twice, and you can just do this like this high deck damage play with some of this stuff at the end of the game when your deck is really thin. The potential lines that I saw there in terms of end game fatigue.
There's just I don't know, it's like so interesting. It like also wants you to play wrench instead of like the Techlo like pistol, which is interesting. Like you have the arms, which gives you a benefit for playing the wrench. You have the construct bank breaker as a thing, which is it is cool. It allows you to like play into the wrench plan and gives you more benefits. It's doing what like people has asked with like the flail in Shadow Heroes, like with Levia and Vincent, like, oh, we want more flail support to make it like a little more relevant. And it did that with wrench. It's like, okay, when you boost a hyperdriver, your wrench comes in for +1, which is really good on I wouldn't say like really good, but it's relevant when you're doing the Banksy coming in for 4 to like put another counter on one of your things. It's like all of a sudden you're doing break points. And then you have the construct bank breaker, which allows you to play around and do like a different game plan.
Sorry, I just got pointed out. I was looking through the spoiler chat at the same time. The helmet is a base helmet.
Is it a what?
It's a base helmet.
Whoa.
Right. That's crazy. Are they looking for you to be playing a certain helmet? How do I search the I guess we just search mechanologist helmets, right?
Right.
Legal in Maxx. Or I guess just equipment. I need to see what helmets they're wanting you to utilize this with. Like, is it circuit breaker?
Mechanologist search.
I guess it's anti-fatigue, so maybe data mine. No, actually, data mine's not terrible. This is the one where you once per turn instant destroy a card underneath this, draw a card, then put a card from your hand on top of your deck. It's actually not bad. Lets you boost away the second the second hyperdriver. I could not think of hyperdriver for a second there.
Base only quadrants.
I'm not seeing any helmets that just stick out to me as helmets that you would run. I mean, you could just start running Evo Steel Soul Memory, the Tekla helmet, just for fun.
Yeah,
just as a blue that you could play, which honestly isn't the worst idea. You block with a helmet, you discard a hyperdriver. Later on, you just like play this. You boost into playing this or something. I don't know.
What a weird thing to make that a base helmet.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Evo Data Mine, maybe? What does that do?
You know, Evo Zoom Call is when this is equipped.
The card under. Oh yeah, what is that one?
This one is when this is equipped, you may banish a card from your hand if you do draw a card. So you could banish a hyperdriver with this one, which is what you want to do typically. I don't know, this doesn't seem strong enough.
There's Evo Data Mine.
Yeah,
destroy card under this, draw a card, put a card from your hand on top of your deck. It lets you. Oh, so you could change it to Evo Data Mine if you have those that you're yellow. You replace this, and then you can choose what you're gonna. So you can choose to banish a hyperdriver off boosting.
Yeah, I don't know if it's worth, because you have to spend this whole card to do it, right? And it's not one of the instant ones. It's an action. Fair. It's really interesting that they chose to do this. There must be a reason why only this piece has that. That's so odd. Maybe we'll find out later. Maybe there's going to be an expansion slot card or something that utilizes that, really wants you to run Evo upgrades for the helmet. That's interesting.
It is interesting. I think it allows more gameplay to like play around maybe a stack plane or something weird like that.
Sorry, I'm looking through the spoiler discussion, and Tanner is our local. He's not even like a local Maxx anymore. He's an old renowned Maxx now, but he's a through and through Maxx player, and it's just so funny some of the comments he's making. He really liked the chest though. He mentioned that the chest is actually really good. Apparently, it's just upgraded to a Foundry Heart. I guess I could see it if you're running more of the non-token hyperdrivers now. Just having it come with an extra steam counter is a pretty big deal. When Techno Foundry Heart before was basically just a block 2 anyway. But this is temper, so you don't want to destroy it.
Crazy. Okay. Do we want to get to the other spoilers from?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a little sidetracked.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't sidetracking. We I guess it was a little bit sidetracking.
That's fair. That's super cool though. Perfect timing.
Yeah. Perfect timing. We were podcast blessed this week after getting podcast podcast blur
First.
cursed. I cannot say that to save my life. But yeah, do you want to read through the high seas spoilers that we barely missed last week?
Yeah, so starting off, we have Sky Skimmer, which is a 0 for 4, 3 at red mechanologist attack action that
4 at
reads
red.
once per.
Just making a correction. 4 at red.
Oh, yes, sorry. Once per turn instant. Still, we think it's that tap or turn or whatever exhaust symbol. So, like, exhaust a cog you control. This gets +1 or go again. So it could be a 0 for 4 go again or a 0 for 5.
Yeah. Actually, since most people have probably already seen these, we could probably go through these one by one in terms of like theorizing, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, totally.
So this was a really interesting card, mostly because number one, it does not say boost on it. Number two, it's mechanologist, not a pirate mechanologist card, and it mentions a cog you control. So that's implying that these cogs are going to be not just for pirate mechanologists. They can be for regular mechanologists too. And instead of having boost on this card, you basically can exhaust or tap or whatever. I'm going to call it tap. You can tap a cog you control to give it go again or +1. So you can make this a 0 for 5 chain ender, or you can just make this a 0 for 4 go again card in the middle of the turn. It's just really interesting that we can already see that they're going a different direction for this mechanologist. It's not boosting, it's instead interacting with these cogs to get a conditional but choosable benefit.
Which I like. I think it is a good thing to like move away from boost, because I think that's something that some classes struggle with, is that they are stuck to like one game plan, where it's like all mechanologists, like we got a bunch of mechanologists, but all of them deal with boosting right now. Like every single one like attacks through boosting their mechanologist item. Well, this like moves a little bit away from the boosting, and like this mech hero Puffin looks like she's gonna deal with more like galvanize and cogs, which is really cool. It like, and kind of what I was saying with the wrench plan on Maxx, it moves him a little bit away from being the other heroes and moves him more into being more unique ways. Like I think he's already unique with his mechanoid, but I think it moves him more. Well, I think seeing like this kind of thing where it's like tap a cog and this gets whatever, I think it allows for this mech to be her own hero instead of just another one of the boost heroes. And oh, well, you see that Dash IO is the best boost hero, and kind of like Guardian, where it's like we're all like just the worst victor at some point.
Yeah, it really allows for some more individuality within the mechanologist class. Especially because we have so many mechanologists right now, right? We have 5. No, it's 4. Yeah, it's 4, right?
No, it's 5.
Is it 5? Who's the 5th?
Because you got Teklo, Dash, Maxx, and Puffin will be the 5th.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to have 5. Yeah.
No, yeah, sorry.
But yeah, so it's interesting that we have all these mechanologists, and like you said, they're all centered around boosting, and so it'll be cool to explore a mechanologist that is not focused on boosting away their deck and not just blasting through their deck to get a card or a power advantage. Yeah, that's all I have.
Then we have the Golden Cog. It is just crank when this enters the arena, or this enters the arena with a steam counter. At the start of your turn, destroy this unless you remove a steam counter. Mm-hmm. Not what I thought at all Golden Cog was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of interesting. It is just a crank item that you can put out onto the field. And it's interesting because you can like activate your hero ability, create that, then throw this attack after cranking the Golden Cog, and then just crank your Golden Cog. Or tap your Golden Cog to get go again on your attack.
Yeah. It's
like it gives your hero go again for text with Puffin.
Yeah,
it's weird. We'll see how like more cards involve like tapping the Golden Cog or something like that.
I think it's interesting because before we knew what a golden cog was, we kind of figured it was going to do something, right? We thought it was going to be like, oh, it's going to have some sort of effect. We knew it was going to have crank for sure, but we thought it was going to have an effect tied to it. And it's interesting to see that it is quite literally just an item that ticks down. It doesn't do anything else on its own, at least. On its own is simply an item that will disappear after a certain amount of time. But it's interesting that really puts the onus on the cards you play in the deck to utilize this golden cog, right? For example, Puffin doesn't actually use golden cogs. She just makes golden cogs, but she doesn't actually do anything. Or sorry, it doesn't do anything because Puffin's the bird. It doesn't actually do anything with the golden cog by itself. It just makes them for the rest of your deck to function. So it'll be interesting to see how Puffin really wants to utilize how the decks get constructed in order to make use of these golden cogs. And galvanize is obviously one way to use them, right? But we know that we can tap or whatever these cogs and galvanize, which is probably where she's going to lean looking into this further. Galvanize is going to become a little bit stronger to utilize these cogs before they go away.
I'm gonna skip over the necromancer stuff for a second because that's something I want to like go a little deeper on.
Sounds good.
So going over to King Shark Harpoon, it is a red 2 cost 6 power 3 block ranger attack action arrow with the keyword go fish. When this hits a hero, they choose and reveal a card from their hand. If it's an attack action card, they discard it and you create a gold. If you've attacked with a cannon this turn, instead look at their hand and you choose the card. Or if you've activated cannon this turn, sorry. Yeah. That's cool because it implies that we're getting cannons. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping the harpoon gun is a cannon. I'm hoping and praying that it's a cannon. But it's such an interesting keyword because I wonder like how much of the keyword is like relevant. If it's like the whole thing where it's like when this hits a hero all the way down to the like choose a card from their hand. Or if it's like, but it's interesting that we have a keyword for go fish.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. It, like you said, it's possible that part of this text is the definition of go fish, or it's possible that there's actually another thing for this go fish keyword. Like it's possible that go fish actually says, I don't know. I could make something up. Like maybe make a harpoon in your arsenal zone or something like that, right? But we just don't know yet, right? We don't have that information, which is really interesting. Reading this card as is, I think it's funny because it's probably the size of the text or the amount of text that prevented the reminder text being put in here because it was a lot of words in this card.
Yeah, I assume that goldfish is go fish is when it hits a hero, they reveal a card in their hand, and then all the other text is like the different stuff.
I see. It could be. But yeah, like you said, also the fact that they reference a cannon is really interesting because we don't know what a cannon is yet. We assumed that Marlin was going to have a harpoon as her weapon, but it's possible that we have cannons instead. Maybe you have 2 cannons and they allow you, or maybe a cannon is a quiver slot for Marlin. Maybe you have like your harpoon is your main hand and as your like quiver slot, you have a cannon. And that's,
I don't know, that seems a little wild, but it
does. But it would effectively, it's cool flavor wise because it would be like you are on a ship, right? And you have access to a harpoon and you have access to a cannon as your weapon. And they're like 2 different methods that you can do of firing at people from your ship. I think like flavorful wise it makes sense, but obviously it seems kind of odd to have effectively 2 weapons with one of them being a bow in a sense.
Yeah, my like thought is that the cannon is the harpoon gun because I don't know, Flesh and Blood's already weird because like a pistol isn't a gun in Pistol is like I don't know if you've ever looked at the keywords for.
But okay, speaking of, you haven't mentioned the whole pirate as a class thing yet. But But before you do that, I would say that this is also in the same realm of like a harpoon is not a cannon, right? Like it's possible that that
That's
could be
fair.
the case, but it's more likely that we're going to learn more about what a cannon is, and it's not going to be the harpoon.
I
Just
have
like
heard theories that it's an item that you get to play. So it's like you put it down and like you get a passive buff or something or an activative ability.
okay, so kind of like Ring of
So
Roses for Verdance, in a sense.
yeah, kind of similar. Or like mech items, like the like good
Yeah.
example, putting down the clamp press, like a clamp press, like, oh, wrenches you control get +2 while this is on the field. Like it could just be an item you play that's like once per turn, tap, instant, your next attack gets +1 or something like that.
Mhm.
Where it's like a big investment, but you gain a huge benefit from it, or something weird.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
I've
It
heard
could be
that
that.
could be it.
Yeah.
And it's just like the idea is like you're going on your boat and you're setting up the cannons and all that, getting them ready and armed.
That's a cool concept. I like that. But yeah, the card until we know what a cannon does, it's a bit hard to evaluate it, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact that it's a 2 for 6 and it potentially discards a card when it hits, that's pretty good. That's a pretty good effect.
Right. It could discard a card of your choosing too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that if you don't get to choose, there's a decent chance that they just reveal a non-attack action or just like instant or anything. Um, so I think you kind of need, unless you're facing like another aggro hero that just only runs attack action cards, you'll probably need the cannon in order to guarantee the discard.
Yeah.
And what about well, we actually already saw Big Game Trophy Shot, didn't we? What was the new one? The harpoon, right?
Yeah. So next we have the Goldfin Harpoon, which is a yellow card but pitches for nothing. You cannot pitch this card.
Yeah.
But it is a 0 cost 2 attack arrow that also does not block. Its text is, if this would be put into the graveyard, instead remove it from the game.
So
what a weird card.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? Because it doesn't say ephemeral, which is what you think it should say, right? You would think that this card would be just ephemeral, like a Crouching Tiger or like a Fang Strike or a Slither, right? But it's not. It specifically has reminder text that says this card is yellow but can't be pitched. And we have this new B lettering for instead of like a token rarity, it's a B rarity, which I believe means basic. That's right. It means basic.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, so that's the new their new differentiator between token cards and token rarity cards. If that makes sense.
That
So like
makes a lot of
before,
sense. I like that.
yeah. So before it was hard to say. Like you have to delineate. Okay, so this hero is a token rarity hero, but it's not a token card. A token card is more like gold or those cards that you pull from outside the game during the game are token cards. And so that this is a way to differentiate. Now this is a basic card. It is not a token card. It is a basic card, which means you can start with it in your deck. So you can register this card in your 60 card deck, right? In your 80. But you still can't pitch it. And if it would be put in the graveyard, it'd be removed from the game, which is interesting because that means that if there's a potential reason for them to make it so that you can run it in the deck, there's got to be some really good benefits for running this card in your deck to want to start with it in your deck, right? Yeah, very interesting card. A lot of weird little implications to it.
It's like super restrictive as like a card in your deck. So it's weird. Like there's got to be some huge benefit to like having this in your deck and being able to shoot it through like a harpoon gun or something.
Right. Yeah, there's got to be some benefit.
Yeah, but next we have the full text of Treasure Island. I think it's exactly what you said it is, but we'll go over it again just in case. The first time a hero is attacked each turn, put a gold counter on this. Whenever you or an ally control deals damage to an opposing hero, you remove that many gold counters from this then create gold tokens equal to the number of counters removed this way. That is,
Yeah,
it's a cool card. I
it
think it's
is.
like listening to the dev talk, this card affects the limited environment a lot. So I'm really excited to see how this interacts with the limited environment.
Yeah, so I actually did catch a little bit of that part of the dev talk where they were talking about Treasure Island, and yeah, apparently, did you catch whether or not I didn't catch this? Did you catch whether or not each player has one, or if it's just one macro for both players?
Oh, I didn't catch that. I think it's each player has one.
Yeah, okay, because like
But I know they were talking super deep about how there's some super cool strategies where you like starve your opponent of gold in it, or
right,
like in the set, or like do some stuff like that, and you can control how people play around Treasure Island, and it changes crazy. Like not like it changes limited a lot.
yeah, yeah. So, and I was listening to the Arsenal Pass podcast where there was some theorizing on it's this is likely the fix for higher rarity equipment that you would normally get to run in CC to make gold more effectively. Whereas in limited, you're not going to have these legendary equipment or any other these consistent equipment to get gold consistently. And so this might be the primary way that you get gold in limited format in order to do all of your hero abilities and stuff. And if that's the case, if you and your opponent are just attacking each other and like taking damage every turn, you're both getting a lot of gold, right? Like
Right.
if each player has one of these, that means when you attack your opponent, you're going to put a gold token on this. And then when your opponent attacks you back, you're going to put a gold token on this. And every time you hit your opponent, you're basically going to get 2 gold, right? If that keeps happening back and forth. And so you're going to be getting a lot of gold from this macro.
Yeah,
But
it's gonna be super cool to see how it interacts, and it makes like this card alone makes me think of like fan made Flesh and Blood formats where like all of a sudden you have like, oh, like it could be a format that's based around like locations and landmarks and like macros where it's like, oh, like I can't even think of a good idea, but like I can imagine like
yeah,
formats in the future being built around like macros, or even having like weird armory nights where it's like, oh, we're having like a Treasure Island like night or something weird like that.
yeah. That's a cool concept to bring macros outside of the limited format, or at least the draft format specifically. I will say, I do want to say that I think that macros like this add a twist to the limited format in such a way that helps alleviate some of the problems that were brought up in our discussion on why draft might not be as popular as CC in Living Legend and Blitz. And I think that having macros like these to really change the way that limited is played and make it a fresh format that's not just underpowered CC heroes or underpowered Blitz heroes or whatever, you're almost playing like a separate mini game in this draft
Mm-hmm.
format that can add just a little bit of a twist to make it more interesting and more appealing for people to try out and to play more. I think that's a really cool addition that this adds to the limited format.
Is super cool, and this one's like so passive. It's not like a one-time use like in uh
Well, define
was
passive.
that a
I think this is a very active and engaging macro.
Yeah,
Um,
well, when I mean passive, like the effect will go off no matter what when you're doing the game. You don't have to do anything different. You might play different because of it, but you don't have to do anything different for this to activate.
fair.
While like with the other one, you like once per game gotta destroy it and prevent a certain amount of arcane.
Mm-hmm.
This one's super cool because it sticks around the entire game. It's gonna be there. You're gonna play with it.
It's super interesting for that reason. I agree. Um, yeah, and how about our new class? Well, dual class heroes cards.
Oh yeah. So now we'll move into what is necromancer cards. And these are super cool. We can start with the Compass of Sunken Depths, which is an instant a tap exhaust. Look at the top card of your deck. Then it has the first card with Watery Grave you play from your graveyard each turn gets Go Again.
Interesting.
It's like the Scepters and Illusionist, which allows you to play your cards from Watery Grave, and we can go a little bit further into this when we go to the next one. But it allows, like, a lot of the cards that we've seen with Watery Grave don't have Go Again. So when you play them, they like don't do anything, which is super interesting. Also, the instant look at the top of your deck is crazy with the like effects like that this hero runs. Like,
I mean,
how
you're
am I
basically
forgetting
playing
his
Dash
name
IO, so like, how can you go wrong?
Does that make you want to play the hero more now?
A little bit, yeah. No, but I mean, like you said, you don't these allies don't have Go Again when you to play them. So this is basically how Whip fixes that. This is also leaning to the idea of you're gonna play one of these allies per turn at most. Well, not at most, but the idea is to play just one ally per turn, right? You're not gonna flood the board. You're not gonna spam out all these allies and then start swing with all of them like Dromai did, right? It's more of like you're gonna play one ally a turn. You're gonna get some good value of that ally, whether it's through attacking or their blocking effects like Chum has, and that's gonna be the game plan. You're gonna be a very mid-rangey defensive, like you can play these allies and get some and try to milk value out of them that way.
Yeah, and it's super cool how it like works with the ability where it's like destroy gold, draw a card, and then discard a card. So it plays into his ability where you can look at the top of the deck and know what you're gonna draw to be able to play around that.
Yeah, it definitely helps the consistency.
And then going on to the next one, which is like where it gets super cool, is you have Chum, Friendly First Mate, which is a yellow card, cost 4 attack with 6 health, and it's a pirate necromancer action ally. Before we even go into the text, this goes into your deck. It does it block? Like, how does this work? How do you get it out of your hand? Like, do you have to play it or do you have to discard it? Like, it doesn't have a defense value.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thing is they chose not to have them like Drumeyes dragons, where you have the invocation side and the dragon side. It's not like that. You just have the one side of the card, and there, like you said, there's no block value. You cannot block with this card unless you have some other way to block with it, right? So that's where all this discard synergy comes into play. You have to discard this card to get it into your grave. And have we gone over Watery Grave yet? I wanted to ask, did we actually have Chum when we talked about? Did we talk about Chum last week? Did we have access to it?
I don't think we didn't see any allies before last week.
But yeah, so Watery Grave says when this is put into your graveyard from the arena, turn it face down. So basically, if you have Chum out on your field and then he goes to the graveyard, he's put face down. So then you can no longer play him from your graveyard through the effect of Watery Grave, right? Or through the effect of your hero ability, right?
To my understanding, when a card's turned face down, it like doesn't exist. It's not like the banish zone, like where it's like, oh, it technically exists, it's just in a different zone of field. It's like it's no longer like in deck, or like it just doesn't exist anymore. So like the idea that you turn it face down is you can't resummon it.
Yeah, so there's actually, I don't see it here, and it's possible that it was like a leaked card, not a really spoiled card, but there is a reason why it's face down graveyard instead of face down banish, where like face down banish is like it's out of the game, right? Like you're not interacting with the face down banish card anymore. But face down discard actually is a little bit interactable with certain cards. It's just it does remove the ability for you to use the Watery Grave effect immediately through Gravy Bones' ability to then play it out again. You're not going to keep infinitely recurring Chub. Like you can't just keep playing him out over and over again when he leaves, right? You have to. He's meant to be like a 1 asterisk to use.
Right. But going into his actual text, we talked so much around him. He has Watery Grave, but he is a action exhaust and he attacks for 4. It's not a once per turn action. So if you get multiple action points, you can attack with them multiple times. If you can also, what I would assume is untap him, which is like interesting in its own right. But there's also the instant ability of tap, discard a card with Watery Grave. Until the end of turn, opponents must choose this as the target of attack if able.
Really interesting. It's like a mini
Have
ALS.
you? I was just about to say, people are comparing this to Arclight Sentinel.
Mhm.
It's a little different because you still hit. So, like, you could, if you snatch, you still draw a card.
Right.
But you are going to be preventing 6 damage. Like, they have to deal 6 damage to this to get them off board.
Mhm.
And it's really cool because you could, at the end of every, like, say you're playing against Aurora and she's not choosing to, like, kill Chum, you could always, on her last attack, just, like, discard a Watery Grave and, like, 4 damage.
Right.
And it's just reoccurring. It's super cool. And I think it's a super cool effect.
I do too. I think it's really cool, mostly because you have this like built-in synergy, right? Of you're discarding a card with Watery Grave. Right now,
Mhm.
the only Watery Grave cards we're seeing are these allies that you can summon from the grave, right? And so it's another method of getting rid of one of these Watery Grave cards without having to block with it to get into the graveyard. But at the same time, you are like quote unquote spending a card to force them to attack your ally, which they might have wanted to do in the first place. Like they might
Right.
sequence their turn in such a way to make you discard a card to force them to attack your chum when they just want to do that in the first place, and they made you discard a card to do so. So there's a lot of like back and forth, not mind games, but like what's what I'm looking for, like decision points and like um playing chicken with your opponent.
Advantages and disadvantages.
Yeah. But it's like more like playing chicken with your opponent. Like your opponent can start
Yeah.
attacking you first and be like, "Are you gonna discard a card and make me attack it?" I might not care, right? And then it might get to the point where like your opponent sends their last attack and it's too late. They've already targeted you, right? And maybe you really wanted them, you really want to get the value out of it, but then at a certain point, there's gonna be a lot of play with it. Is basically what I'm getting at, and I think that's really cool. There's a lot of nuance to the ability.
Another thing that's like super interesting is like so far what we've seen is the allies have Watery Grave. So discarding a card with Watery Grave is actually a benefit because you can't block with them. And you can play like with the I'm assuming you can play cards with you might have to have a card that says you can play it from graveyard to play or like
The
play
hero.
Watery cards.
It's the hero that does it.
Oh, does he? Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm like forgetting things.
Gravy Bones.
Oh yeah, if the blue card has been put in your graveyard this turn, you may play Watery cards or Watery Grave cards.
Yep.
Graveyard. Yeah, it's super cool though because like it is also beneficial to like play that ability just for the discard effect to get one of your Watery Grave cards into discard.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like by activating that ability, you're blocking 6 and you are still going to be able to play your card from graveyard. And like you're blocking 6 and giving your first action next turn go again.
Right. Yeah, it's super interesting. I hope everyone got their Call of the Graves because definitely a necessary card for this hero. Call of the Grave not only brings one of these Water Grave allies to your discard pile, but it also satisfies Gravy Bones' condition of if you've played a blue card, if a blue card's been put in your graveyard, because once it resolves, that blue card is going to go to your graveyard and fulfill his effect as condition. So
luckily, I was a Labaya player, so yeah. I've already got mine. I'm set.
I just picked mine up recently, so I would thankfully before they spiked. But yeah, definitely going to be a necessary card for Gravy Bones. It's basically, it's almost guaranteed. Now that we know how the allies work.
Also, the art on Chum is so cool. I love the art so much.
Did you see that they're definitely the marbles are the allies? Yeah.
Oh my god, it looks so good. But I'm gonna jump down to Rigor Mortis.
Mm-hmm.
So Rigor Mortis is another ally. It's another yellow, 1 cost, 6 attack, 1 health, and it's a 1 cost action attack. Mm-hmm. So it is the Watery Grave Rigor Mortis. This is also like super interesting because it's a 1 card 6. It's a little different because he had cost to attack and cost to play.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's like super cool in its own way. It like doesn't have all the extra abilities, but it's just a bigger attack.
Yeah, so it's interesting because they're starting to go into like, I'm gonna keep bringing up Dromai. They're getting to like Dromai levels of stats where like this reminds me a little bit of Vincerakai, where it was a 6 power 1 health dragon, and depending on the meta, if you were in a meta where there's just like not a lot of small attacks, right? Like there's not a lot of ninjas and Aurora isn't running around with her cheap weapon to swing. Your opponent's gonna have to spend a lot more than 1 damage to kill this, right? And so it's important to note that like, yeah, it only has 1 health, but sometimes that's gonna be a big deal. Like you play against Guardian, they're gonna spend their entire attack action point killing this thing, even though it did not cost you that much to play. Whereas with Chum, a lot of decks might be much happier with a 6 health ally that costs you more to play than with a 1 health ally that costs you less to play. And like you mentioned too, they changed the cost on the attack for Rigor Mortis. It costs you a resource in addition to an exhaust or a tap or whatever to swing with them. And it's probably because of how strong how strong Rigor Mortis is.
It is like super interesting because I've seen a lot of people, or I've heard a lot of people talk about like anaphylactic shock, assuming that there's gonna be more like allies that have like 1 health, and that's why anaphylactic shock might be good. So like the assassins have a way to deal with some of these allies.
Yeah, I mean, it potentially, but at the same time, like I said before, this thing has 1 health, and so an assassin doesn't have a big problem with killing it. And also, we're not going to have a ton of allies as Gravy Bones. We're going to have 2, maybe 3 at most allies at a time,
Right.
unless we see more cards that change that. There's a chance that there's like some crazy card that you summon a ton of allies at once, but outside of that, you're going to be playing one of these per turn typically, and these don't have go again for their attacks, so you're probably going to be swinging with one of them per turn. So you're not going to be flooding the board with these things. It's not going to be like you need these like board wipe effects of anaphylactic shock are going to be necessary. It's just going to be like you might get them with Rigor Mortis. You might be able to just kill it when it's attacking or after it's attacked with it, which is obviously not terrible, but you can always just dagger it too, so it's not a big deal.
Next up, we've got Board the Ship. Right, yeah. Board the Ship. So it's a red 2 cost 6 attack that blocks 3. And it says, when this attacks, you may tap an ally you control. If you do, this gets overpower. It's super interesting because all of a sudden, like these, like the next few cards are going to go into allies as a resource to like do your attacks. So to give you the ability, like sometimes you like, it makes me think that there's not actually going to be a lot of ways to give the allies go again, if at all. So you're going to have, but like your card selection in deck is going to give you the ability to. So this one is like a 2 for 6 attack that blocks 3. But like you can use your ally for a resource. You're going to use it. And like say you have a Rigor Mortis on, but you don't have go again. You could just throw Board the Ship instead and tap Rigor Mortis to give overpower.
Yeah, so we're seeing a similarity here with the Mechanologist card, right? Where the Mechanologist card, you want to tap Golden Cog to get a potential benefit, right? Whereas this is, and the cards we're going to reveal or we're going to talk about in a second, are tapping your allies to do a very similar thing, right? And so it's like you said, it's interesting. This is a way to convert your additional allies without needing extra action points. And honestly, if you ask me, this is leaning towards having some smaller allies that you can play. Some little like 0 cost 1/1s or something that like you don't have the action point to make them really like wings, but you can then keep them around for some small bonus effects like overpower on this card.
Yeah. One thing that's really cool is this implies that your deck gets stronger when you have allies and that your cards are all going to deal with allies. So it's like super cool to have like all these cards that have extra effects if you have all these allies. And it's like your allies are helping you. Like I imagine like Board the Ship is like you're coming up to smack the like opponent in the face yourself, and you tap an ally because you're having them crawl up and like grab onto them so they can't move, and that's like the overpower effect.
Yeah, the flavor is really sick. They've definitely gone overboard with the flavor of this set.
I like that. But moving on, we have the next one, which is Paddle Faster, which is a 0 for 4 that blocks 3. Already good. When this attacks, you may tap an ally you control. If you do, this gets go again. Super cool.
Yep, cool card.
Like,
again,
the last one was like, I was like, okay, it's like okay in power level. This one seems crazy and like a staple to the like Pirate Necromancer.
It's interesting. It reminds me of Oath of Loyalty, the Draconic card where you have to play as your first action and you can only play Draconic per turn, mostly because it's a red 0 cost 4 power block 3 that has, in this case, potential go again with a downside, right?
Yeah.
So it reminds me of Oath of Loyalty, and Oath of Loyalty is pretty strong, right? So we can potentially, this is going to be a strong card for that same reason.
Yeah, and it's like it's super cool because like say you have a bunch of allies on board, like you have like a Chum and a couple Rigor Mortis. You could just one card 8 with this, like Paddle Faster, tap one of your allies into Chum, which is a you tap him to attack for 4. Like you have so much like play with this card. But like you said, like it also has the downside. Like you have 0 allies, Paddle Faster, and like aboard the ship. You're like, oh no, I have no allies. What am I
They
gonna
block
do?
3, so I think you're sitting pretty.
Yeah, you still block 3, but you're like, man, I really can't respond. This Enigma just dropped a Mirage guy on me. I have no ally.
Yeah.
Faster for 4. Like
I have a feeling that you're gonna have a tough Enigma matchup if you ask me. Good luck with that one.
But it's like super interesting to see like there are huge downsides to like some of these cards, especially if you don't have allies. But moving on, the last card, I'm pretty sure it's the last card we have, is Hoist 'em Up. It is a red Pirate Necromancer block card. So it blocks 4. So the only thing it does is block 4, except for its ability. When this defends, you may tap an ally. If you do, this gets +1.
Yep.
I am like surprisingly impressed with this card because it's already just a block card that blocks 4, which is all right. I'd rather run defense reaction, but it's okay. But to turn it into a block 5, if you like tap an ally, like say you have a turn where you have like a Rigor Mortis, like I'm not going to be able to, I'm blocking out. I could tap him and block 5 on a like critical breakpoint, which is super duper cool.
Yeah, no, this is interesting. It's again, it depends on how many allies you end up sticking out on the board to like consistently get this effect. And sometimes you might only have 1 or 2 allies, and you just don't want, depending on how the tapping effect works, you might not want to tap your allies. Maybe they don't untap at the start of your turn. Maybe they tap untap at the end of your turn. So then you're blocking 1 extra, but then you don't get to attack with your Chum, right? So there's some really interesting implications depending on how the allies actually function, like how many allies you have, how easy it is to get them out, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's like I like it a lot. It is a downside that it's a block card, but it's like I can see this definitely being something you run like a 2 of in deck, and it's like sideboard. Obviously, you don't play in a wizard, but it's like it is cool to have the option to block 5 on something,
right?
Like against an Aurora. Does she actually throw anything for 5? Actually,
E-Strike. She'll throw E-Strike.
Yeah. Like say that she has the channel Lightning Valley on the board and she throws an E-Strike. Like this will block an E-Strike with 1 card, turn off the channel Lightning value just with 1 card. And it's like there is stuff like in Ninja, like you might have a like them and like having one of their chain enders like Censor. They might have one of their chain enders that is
yeah, I mean 1 card block like 5 is strong, right?
It is very strong.
And it's not like I think it's wax on or off. One of them where it has a condition of it has to be a 0 cost card. Yeah. This can block 5 on any cost card, right? And this gets around the overpower a little bit, right? It's not an action card. So like against Victor and Betsy, it has some extra play there. Like there's just a lot of good things going with this card, right?
Yeah. And it like again, the other benefit is that its base is 4. Like I would have been a little iffy if base was 3 because I'm like, okay, you just put any other card, and sometimes like
Right.
if it was a
Yours is
3
strictly
plus
worse than
2,
interact. Yeah.
yeah, it's like if it was a 3 plus 2, you'd be like, okay, whatever. But this being a 4 plus 1, it's like okay, it already blocks good or pretty well, but like sometimes it is like the best blocking game. Like it will block the most out of any card.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's pretty
So
good.
it is super cool, and like that's all the spoilers. But it is cool to see all these spoilers.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, we definitely. It's nice that we got the extra set of spoilers. That was really cool. But we are getting near. This is a long podcast. We
Yeah.
probably need to cut it soon. Do you want? Do you? I'm gonna put you on the spot here. What's a question you want to ask the viewers to lead out?
Ooh, what hero are you most excited for in the next set?
Yeah, let us know in the comments below, or on Spotify, or on Apple Music, or Apple Podcast rather, if it lets you. I think it lets you. Not sure, but it'll be if it does. Let us know there. And yeah, until next week, I'm Cody.
And I'm Jacob.
Thanks for watching and listening and everything.